What happens when love crosses paths with destiny on a busy street corner? Sometimes the person who broke your heart stands right in front of you, transformed beyond recognition, while you remain invisible to a world that judges by appearances. This is a story about second chances, the masks we wear to survive, and the moment when the past collides with the present in the most unexpected way possible. Before we begin this incredible journey of love, loss, and redemption, I'd love to connect with all of you amazing viewers. Drop a comment below and tell me, what city are you watching from right now? Whether you're in bustling New York, romantic Paris, vibrant Mumbai, or a cozy small town anywhere in the world, this story is for you. Now let's dive into a tale that will touch your heart. The morning sun cast long shadows across Fifth Avenue as Isabella Martinez arranged her flowers with practiced precision. Her small cart, positioned at the corner of 5th and 42nd Street, was a splash of vibrant color against the gray concrete of Manhattan. Red roses, white lilies, and purple orchids created a rainbow that seemed to glow in the early light. At 28, Isabella had learned to make herself invisible. Her long black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her clothes clean but worn, and she moved through her routine with the efficiency of someone who couldn't afford to waste a moment. "Fresh flowers, beautiful flowers," she called out, her voice barely carrying over the noise of traffic. Perfect for someone special. The morning rush began. Businessmen in expensive suits hurried past without a glance, their phones pressed to their ears. Isabella had learned not to expect much from the wealthy crowd that dominated this part of the city. She was part of the backdrop to them, as unremarkable as the street signs. But that was fine. Her real customers were the regular people, nurses, teachers, shop owners, like Mrs. Rodriguez, who bought flowers every Tuesday for her husband's grave. "You okay, mija?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked during her weekly visit, noticing Isabella seemed distracted. Isabella forced a smile. "Just tired." The truth was more complicated. 3 years of selling flowers had barely kept her afloat. Her mother's medical bills, the rent on her tiny Queens apartment, the immigration lawyer's fees, everything seemed to get more expensive while her income stayed the same. Once she'd dreamed of opening her own flower shop, maybe even a small chain. That was back in community college, when she'd been studying horticulture and planning a future that seemed bright and possible. That was also when she'd been in love with Carlos Mendoza. Carlos had been her everything then, a boy from an immigrant family like hers, studying business while working nights to pay for school. They'd spend hours talking about their futures, how he'd start his own company, how she'd open her flower shop, how they'd build a life together. But dreams had a way of revealing who people really were when they got expensive. When her mother's heart condition worsened and Isabella had to drop out of school to work full-time, Carlos had grown distant. Their conversations became shorter, his visits less frequent. When she'd suggested he bring her to meet his new Columbia University friends, he'd made excuses. "You wouldn't fit in," he'd said finally, and the words had cut through her like a blade. The breakup had been inevitable. "I can't handle this," he'd told her in her cramped apartment. "Your situation is too much. I'm 22. I'm not ready for this level of responsibility." Within a month, he'd transferred to Columbia on a scholarship he'd never mentioned. He'd chosen his future over her, and Isabella couldn't even blame him. Why would an ambitious young man tie himself to a girl whose life was falling apart? But understanding his choice didn't make it hurt less. Now, 5 years later, Isabella had built a small life from the pieces. It wasn't the life she'd dreamed of, but it was hers. She took care of her mother, paid her bills, and found moments of beauty in arranging flowers for strangers who rarely saw her as more than part of the city's scenery. She had no way of knowing that everything was about to change. Isabella was arranging a bouquet of white roses when she saw him. He stepped out of a black sedan that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. Tall, perfectly dressed, in a charcoal suit that fit like it had been sewn directly onto his body. His dark hair was styled with expensive precision, his posture radiating the confidence that came with success and power. But it was his profile that made Isabella's hands shake. as she gripped her flower cart. The familiar slope of his nose, the way he held his shoulders, the particular way he moved that had once been as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. It couldn't be him. It couldn't be Carlos. The man turned, speaking to someone Isabella couldn't see, and she caught a glimpse of his full face. Her breath caught in her throat. It was him. Older, transformed, polished beyond recognition, but unmistakably Carlos Mendoza. Carlos, though surely he went by something more sophisticated, now was deep in conversation with two other men in equally expensive suits. Everything about his presence screamed success, the confidence in his gestures, the way the other men deferred to his opinions, the casual way he wore wealth. This wasn't the Carlos she'd known 5 years ago. That Carlos had shopped at thrift stores and eaten rice and beans for dinner. This man looked like he'd never known a day of financial worry. "Focus, Isabella," she whispered to herself in Spanish, but she couldn't stop watching him. The group began moving toward the office building. Directly behind her cart, one of the most prestigious addresses in the city. As they approached, she could hear fragments of their conversation. "The quarterly projections look excellent," one man said. "We need to move fast on the biotech acquisition," Carlos replied, his voice deeper than she remembered, but still unmistakably his. Isabella kept her head down, pretending to be absorbed in her flowers. They would walk right past her, she realized. She would be invisible to them, just another part of the city's background. And that's exactly what happened. The three men strode past her cart without a glance. Carlos was so close that Isabella could smell his expensive cologne, could see the platinum watch on his wrist. 5 years ago, she'd sewn patches on his jeans. Now he looked like he could buy entire city blocks. As they disappeared into the gleaming lobby, Isabella slumped against her cart. The contrast between what Carlos had become and what she remained was breathtaking. He had transcended everything they'd once shared. While she was still here, still struggling. Around noon, Isabella saw Carlos again. This time he was alone, walking with the purposeful stride of a man in control of his world. He paused at the crosswalk just feet from her cart, checking his phone. Isabella held her breath, part of her hoping he would look up and see her, part of her terrified of what would happen if he did. But Carlos never lifted his eyes from his phone. When the light changed, he crossed the street and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Isabella feeling invisible and forgotten. That afternoon, curiosity got the better of her. Isabella pulled out her phone and searched Carlos Mendoza, New York. The results made her breath catch. Carlos Mendoza, CEO and founder, Pinnacle Global Ventures. Headlines from business magazines filled her screen. Seattle's rising star in tech investment. The youngest CEO to make Forbes's 30 under 30. Mendoza's investment firm closes $500 million funding round. Isabella clicked through article after article, her eyes widening. Carlos had built $1 billion investment company. The photos showed him at charity galas, shaking hands with business leaders, speaking at conferences. In every image, he looked confident, successful, completely at home in a world of high finance. One recent article caught her attention. Mendoza returns to New York. Roots with new downtown headquarters. He'd moved his company from Seattle to New York just 6 months ago, establishing offices 8 blocks from where she sold flowers every day. 8 blocks. He'd been 8 blocks away for 6 months and she'd never known. Isabella stared at her phone, overwhelmed. The boy who'd left because her problems were too much had become one of New York's most successful businessmen. He had everything: money, power, recognition. And what did she have? A flower cart, and the same struggle she'd been fighting for 5 years. The next morning brought an unexpected encounter that would change everything. Isabella was repositioning her cart after a spring shower when she heard her name spoken with uncertainty. Isabella. Her head snapped up to find Carlos standing directly in front of her cart. Alone now, his expensive suit darkened with rain droplets. For a moment, neither moved. They simply stared at each other across her flower display, 5 years of separation stretching between them. "It is you," Carlos said softly. "I thought I was imagining things." Isabella's throat felt dry. "Hello, Carlos." Wow." He ran his hand through his styled hair a gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. "I can't believe it's really you." "What are you doing here?" The question stung. What was she doing here? Surviving. "I work here," she said simply. Carlos's eyes took in her cart, her simple clothes, her flower-stained hands. She watched his expression change as reality set in. "You sell flowers," he said. "I sell flowers," Isabella confirmed, lifting her chin. She wouldn't apologize for honest work. "Isabella, Carlos started, then stopped. "How long have you been doing this?" 3 years at this corner. 4 years total selling flowers. Since a year after you left me," she didn't add. "And before that?" Isabella hesitated. "Different jobs, whatever I could find." Carlos nodded, wanting more but unsure how to ask. Before the conversation could continue, a familiar voice interrupted. "Darling, there you are." The blonde woman from the day before appeared at Carlos's side, slipping her arm through his with practiced ease. She was everything Isabella wasn't. Tall, polished, wearing a designer dress that cost more than Isabella's monthly rent. "I was just buying flowers," Carlos said, his professional mask sliding back into place. "How lovely," the woman said without looking at Isabella's displays. "Which ones did you want?" Carlos's eyes met Isabella's, and she saw apology and shame in his expression. He was trapped by his own deception. "The white roses," he said quietly. "A dozen, please." Isabella's hands moved automatically, selecting 12 perfect roses. White roses had been his mother's favorite. She'd helped him pick them for Mother's Day during their second year together. "That'll be $20, Isabella said. Carlos handed her a $50 bill. "Keep the change." Isabella wanted to throw the money back at him, but $30 was $30. "Thank you," she said stiffly. As they walked away, Isabella heard the woman's voice. "Such a sweet gesture, buying flowers from that poor girl. You're always so thoughtful about helping the less fortunate." Isabella felt her face burn. To Carlos's companion, she wasn't a person with history or dreams. She was just that poor girl, an object of charity. The worst part was that Carlos didn't correct her. That evening, as Isabella loaded her van, she found a business card tucked under her supplies. Expensive cardstock with embossed lettering. Carlos Mendoza, CEO and founder, Pinnacle Global Ventures. On the back, in handwriting, she recognized, "Isabella, I know I have no right to ask, but please call me. There's so much you don't know about why I left, and so much I need to tell you. You deserved better than I gave you then, and you deserve the truth now. C." Isabella stared at the card, her thumb tracing the expensive lettering. Part of her wanted to tear it up. What could he possibly say that would make any difference? But another part, the part that remembered being 23 and completely in love, was curious. After 3 days of staring at Carlos's business card, Isabella finally called. "Isabella." His voice was warm, relieved when he came on the line. "I wasn't sure you'd call." "I almost didn't." "But you did. Does that mean you'll hear me out?" "Let me explain." Isabella closed her eyes, sitting in her tiny apartment. "I don't know what you think there is to explain, Carlos. You made your choice 5 years ago." "That's what I thought too. But I need you to understand what really happened after I left. The truth is, I didn't choose my career over you. I chose fear over love, and it's been eating me alive ever since." Something in his voice made her pause. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Please let me take you to dinner. Somewhere quiet where we can really talk." "Carlos." "1 dinner. 2 hours. If you still hate me after that, I'll never bother you again." Isabella looked around her apartment. Bills on the table. Wilted flowers she'd brought home. What did she have to lose? Fine, 1 dinner. 2 nights later, Isabella stood outside an exclusive midtown restaurant, feeling out of place in her one good dress. Carlos was waiting, less polished than usual, more nervous. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out her chair. They ordered. Carlos handled the wine while Isabella chose the least expensive item, then sat in awkward silence until their drinks arrived. "So," Isabella said, "you wanted to explain." Carlos took a deep breath. "I need to start with why I really broke up with you. You told me. You said I was holding you back." "I lied." His admission was flat, matter-of-fact. I told myself that's what I believed, but it wasn't true. The truth was that I was terrified. Of what? Of failing you. Of not being enough, Carlos leaned forward. Isabella, when your mother got sick, and you started talking about dropping out to help support your family, I panicked. Not because I thought you were holding me back, but because I realized I couldn't help you. I was 22 with no money, no connections, no way to solve your problems. Isabella frowned. I never asked you to solve my problems. I know, but I wanted to. I wanted to be the man who could take care of you, who could make everything better. Instead, I was just another broke student. Carlos's voice grew thick. So I convinced myself that the best thing I could do was get out of your way. That wasn't your decision to make. No, it wasn't, and it was the worst mistake of my life. Carlos pulled out a worn piece of paper. I wrote you a letter the night I broke up with you. I never sent it, but I kept it. I've carried it for 5 years. Why? Because it contains everything. I should have said, but was too scared to admit. Carlos cleared his throat and began to read. Isabella, I know you think I'm leaving because I'm ashamed of you, but that's not true. I'm leaving because I'm not good enough for you. I'm not strong enough to stand by your side and watch you struggle while being unable to help. You deserve someone who can solve your problems, not create new ones. So I'm walking away, hoping that someday I'll become worthy of what you offered me. I love you more than you'll ever know. That's why I have to let you go. When he finished, Isabella was crying. You idiot! You complete idiot! I know. I never needed you to solve my problems. I just needed you to love me through them. I know that now. Carlos folded the letter carefully. Isabella, I've spent the last 5 years trying to become worthy of you. What do you mean? Everything I've accomplished, every business deal, every success, it was all motivated by the hope that someday I'd be good enough to deserve a second chance with you. Isabella stared at him. You didn't know I was here. I hired a private investigator to find you 6 months ago. His admission was quiet but firm. I knew exactly where you were. I moved my company to New York because of you. Isabella felt the world tilt. You've been watching me. Not watching, just knowing where you were, making sure you were okay. Carlos reached across the table. Isabella, I built a billion-dollar company because I thought that's what I needed to do to deserve you. And the woman I saw you with? Carlos's face darkened. Miranda, my ex-fiancée. I broke up with her after seeing you again. You were engaged, for all the wrong reasons. We looked good together on paper, but I didn't love her. After seeing you, remembering what real love felt like, I couldn't pretend anymore. Isabella sat back, overwhelmed. Everything she'd believed about their breakup was crumbling. You can't just decide you want me back after 5 years, she said. You can't build a fortune and think you can buy your way back into my life. That's not what I'm trying to do, isn't it? You said you thought you needed to become worthy of me. Carlos was quiet. You're right. That is what I thought. But seeing you again, you were always worthy. You were always enough. I was the one who wasn't ready. What happened to my dreams? Isabella asked quietly. I wanted to study horticulture, open my own garden center. Isabella's laugh was bitter. Life happened. Medical bills didn't stop when you left. I had to work 3 jobs for 2 years just to keep us afloat. 3 jobs. Cleaning offices at night, grocery store during the day, landscaping on weekends. I was so tired I sometimes fell asleep standing up. Carlos's face was pale. If I had known, you would have what? Come back? Isabella shook her head. You made your choice. Maybe. We both needed to grow up separately before we could understand what love really means. And what does it mean? It means showing up, staying when things get difficult, choosing each other every day, not just when it's convenient. Isabella's voice grew stronger. It means loving someone including their problems, not despite them. Carlos nodded slowly. I understand that now. Do you? You've had 5 years to reach out, to be a friend when I needed one most. Would you have wanted that? If I had called you a year later, would you have wanted to hear from me? Isabella considered, honestly. Maybe not then, but later. Yes, I think I would have wanted to know you still cared about me as a person. I never stopped caring. But you stopped trying. There's a difference. They sat in silence, the weight of Isabella's words between them. What can I do now? Carlos asked finally. How can I prove I've learned? You can't prove it. You can only live it. And even then, there are no guarantees. Are we so different now? Isabella studied his face, looking for traces of the boy she'd loved. They were there, but there were new things too. Confidence from success, polish from years in boardrooms. Yes, she said, you've become the man you thought I needed. But Carlos, that was never what I needed from you. What did you need? I needed you to believe that what we had was worth fighting for. I needed you to trust we could figure things out together. Carlos reached across and took her hand. His was softer now, the hands of a man who worked with his mind. But his touch still sent electricity through her. I want to have that faith now, he said. I want to fight for us now. Isabella looked at their joined hands, his manicured, wearing an expensive watch, hers rough from flower stems, stained with work. It might be too late, she said softly, or it might be exactly the right time. Isabella pulled her hand away gently. I need time to think. This is too much, too fast. I understand. Take all the time you need. And Carlos, if you're serious about wanting to be part of my life again, you need to understand something. I'm not the girl you left behind. I'm not going to be grateful that a successful businessman wants to rescue me. I would never! You already did. When that woman called me that poor girl, and you didn't correct her. Carlos flushed with shame. You're right. I was a coward. If we're going to try to be friends, and that's all I'm offering, right now, then you need to respect the woman I've become, not just remember the girl I was. Friends, Carlos repeated, disappointment in his voice. Friends, Isabella confirmed. Maybe. If you can prove you respect my choices and my life, I'll take whatever you're willing to give me. As they left the restaurant, Isabella felt cautiously hopeful, not because she thought they could recreate the past, but because maybe they could build something new, something stronger, based on who they actually were. Over the next month, Carlos began appearing at Isabella's flower cart with surprising regularity. Not every day, but often enough that she began to expect him. He came as a customer, buying flowers for his office or his mother, engaging with her world without overwhelming it. The first visits were awkward. Carlos was clearly struggling with how to be present without taking over. But gradually they found their rhythm. The tulips are beautiful today, he said one Thursday morning. They're from a farm upstate, Isabella replied. The owner's been farming for 40 years. Tell me about him. This became Carlos's way, asking about her world, her customers, her suppliers. His questions seemed genuine, his attention never wavering, even when she talked about wholesale prices or seasonal availability. His name is Frank, Isabella said, arranging flowers as she spoke. He started the farm with his wife in the 80s. She passed away 2 years ago, but he keeps growing because it makes him feel close to her. That's beautiful. He's teaching his grandson now. 3 generations. Is that what you want? Something that lasts like that? Isabella paused, considering. I used to dream bigger. Flower shops, maybe a chain. But now, I like this. I like knowing my customers, being part of the neighborhood. There's something to be said for small and sustainable. Size doesn't determine success, Carlos said. Tell that to the business magazines. The magazines don't know everything. Some of the most successful people I know run small operations that serve their communities well. It was statements like this that made Isabella believe Carlos had learned something from his journey to success. He seemed more comfortable with different definitions of achievement. Their conversations extended beyond business. Carlos started arriving earlier, buying flowers but lingering to talk about books, movies, memories from college that felt safe to revisit. Do you remember Professor Martinez's economics class? He asked one morning. The one where you fell asleep and snored so loud the whole class laughed. I was working double shifts that week, Carlos protested, smiling. She was so nice about it. Just kept teaching like nothing happened. She told me later she used to work 3 jobs getting her PhD. She understood. She was one of the good ones. I sent her a donation last year when the economics department was struggling. That was thoughtful. It was selfish, actually. She changed my life. I owed her more than money. Moments like these, when Carlos revealed how he honored people who'd helped him, showed Isabella that success hadn't corrupted him completely. 3 weeks after their dinner, Carlos arrived with a proposal. "There's a community garden project starting in Brooklyn," he said without preamble. "They're looking for someone to help design the layout and choose plants." "Okay," Isabella said slowly. "It's volunteer work, but it's exactly what you studied in school. Horticulture, community planning, sustainable practices." Carlos seemed nervous. "I thought you might be interested." Isabella frowned. "How do you know about this?" "I may have made some calls, asked about opportunities that might interest someone with your background." "Carlos, before you get angry, hear me out. This project is real, and they genuinely need someone with your expertise. I just heard about it and thought of you." Isabella studied his face for signs of manipulation, but saw only genuine excitement and nervousness. "Tell me more." Carlos's face lit up. "It's a neighborhood struggling with food access. The city wants to create a community garden where residents can grow vegetables and learn sustainable agriculture. They need someone for plant selection, soil management, seasonal planning, things you're naturally good at." "And you think I'm qualified?" "You've been running your own business for 4 years. You understand plants, seasons, customer needs, community dynamics. You're more qualified than most people who'd apply." Isabella felt a familiar flutter of excitement, the same feeling she'd once gotten dreaming about her future in horticulture. "When would this start?" "There's an information meeting next week. No commitment, just a chance to learn more." Well, Isabella liked the sound of working with a community team, contributing to something larger than herself. "I'll think about it." "Really?" "Really, but Carlos, I need you to understand, if I do this, I'm doing it for me and the community. Not because you suggested it. Of course, I wouldn't have it any other way." The following week, Isabella found herself in a Brooklyn community center with 30 other volunteers. The project coordinator, Maria Santos, was a dynamic woman who'd been organizing community development for 20 years. "We need people who understand soil composition, companion planting, seasonal timing, all the technical aspects of urban gardening," Maria said. Isabella felt herself sitting straighter. These were exactly her areas of expertise. When Maria asked for volunteers to lead specific aspects, Isabella surprised herself by raising her hand. "I have a background in horticulture," she said. "I'd like to help with plant selection and layout planning." "Wonderful. What's your experience?" "I studied horticulture in college, and I've run a flower business for 4 years. I understand seasonal planning, soil requirements, and how different plants interact." Maria beamed. "Would you be willing to chair our planning committee?" Isabella felt excitement mixed with terror. Chair a committee? Take leadership in something this significant? "Yes," she heard herself say. "I'd love to." Walking to her van afterward, Isabella realized Carlos had given her something precious. Not money or charity, but an opportunity to remember who she was beyond her struggles. A chance to use her education to contribute skills she'd almost forgotten she possessed. When she saw him the next morning, Isabella had different gratitude to express. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For seeing something in me that I'd forgotten was there." Carlos smiled. "I never forgot. I just had to wait for the right moment to remind you." As Isabella prepared his usual arrangement, white roses and babies, she realized maybe they were both ready to build something new. Not a recreation of what they'd once had, but something stronger, built on who they actually were. 4 months later, Isabella stood in the middle of the Brooklyn community garden, watching children plant seeds in soil she'd helped prepare. The quarter-acre lot that had once been empty now bloomed with vegetables, herbs and flowers that brought life to the neighborhood. "The tomatoes are coming in beautifully," said Mrs. Chen, an elderly volunteer who'd become Isabella's closest collaborator. "Your companion planting suggestion was perfect." Isabella smiled, wiping dirt from her hands. The garden had exceeded expectations. Families were growing their own food. But the space had become more, a gathering place where children learned, teenagers found purpose, and elderly residents shared knowledge. More importantly, The project had reignited Isabella's passion for horticulture. Leading the planning committee had reminded her how much she loved the science of growing things, the satisfaction of transforming empty space into something productive and beautiful. "Isabella," Maria called from across the garden, "can you look at the fall planting plan?" As Isabella walked toward her, she noticed a familiar figure by the entrance. Carlos stood there, not in his usual business attire but in jeans and a casual shirt, holding coffee and watching the activity with a gentle smile. They'd been building their friendship slowly over the past 4 months. Carlos continued buying flowers from her cart, but their relationship had evolved beyond brief morning interactions. Coffee a few times, community meetings, comfortable dinners, not romantic dates, but conversations between people learning to trust each other again. Isabella had been careful about boundaries, making it clear she wasn't ready for more than friendship. Carlos had respected that without pressure, but lately she'd begun to wonder if those boundaries were protecting her or limiting her. After consulting with Maria about fall plantings, Isabella walked over to where Carlos waited. "What brings you to Brooklyn?" she asked. "I wanted to see what you've built here. Maria tells me you've become indispensable." "Hardly, it's a team effort." "That's not what I heard. Apparently you've revolutionized their seasonal planning and increased yield by 40%. Isabella blushed. "You've been checking up on me?" "Maria and I serve on the same non-profit board. Your name comes up whenever we discuss successful community projects." Carlos's voice was warm with pride. "She says you're a natural leader, that you have a gift for bringing people together. It doesn't feel like leadership. It feels like coming home, like remembering who I was supposed to be." "I know that feeling." They walked through the garden together, Isabella explaining different sections. Carlos asked thoughtful questions, listening with the attention that had always made her feel valued. "There's something I want to tell you," Carlos said as they reached the flower section, Isabella's particular pride, where blooms grew alongside vegetables to attract beneficial insects and provide beauty. "What's that?" "I've been thinking about what you said 4 months ago. About love meaning showing up, staying when things get difficult, choosing each other every day." Isabella's heart began beating faster. "And I want you to know that whether we're friends or something more, I'm choosing you every day. Not the idea of you or the girl from college, but the woman you are now. The woman who builds community, gardens and runs her own business and lights up every space she enters." Isabella stopped walking. "Carlos, I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I see you. I see your strength, your incredible ability to grow beautiful things from nothing. And I'm grateful every day that I get to be your friend." Isabella looked at this man who'd once broken her heart, then spent years trying to become worthy of her love. She realized something that surprised her. She'd forgiven him completely, not because of his explanations or success, but because she'd learned to see their past as part of both, their stories rather than her defining tragedy. "Carlos," she said softly, "what if I said I was ready for something more than friendship?" His eyes widened. "Are you?" "I think so. Not because you've proven yourself, or because I need rescuing, or because we can recapture what we once had." Isabella reached out and took his hand. Noting his calluses were returning, he'd been volunteering at the garden on weekends. "But because I like who we are together now. I like who I am when I'm with you." Carlos's smile was radiant. "I like who we are together too. It won't be easy. We're still figuring out who we are individually. My life is still complicated. Responsibilities, financial struggles sometimes, dreams that don't involve boardrooms. And my life involves boardrooms, international travel, pressures you might not want to deal with. We're different people living in different worlds. So what do? We do what we've been doing. We show up for each other. We stay when things get difficult. We choose each other every day, including each other's complications." Carlos squeezed her hand gently. "And we see what grows." Isabella looked around the garden, at tomato plants heavy with fruit, at children learning to tend their plots, at flowers bringing beauty to space that had once been forgotten. "I like things that grow," she said. "Me too." As the sun set over Brooklyn, casting golden light across the community garden they'd helped create together. Isabella and Carlos stood among the flowers and vegetables, holding hands and talking about the future. Not the perfect future they'd once imagined as naive students, but a real future built on honest love, mutual respect, and the wisdom that came from learning to tend what mattered most. Sometimes the best love stories aren't about finding your way back to who you used to be, but about growing into who you're meant to become, together. Thank you for joining me on this journey of love, second chances, and the courage to grow beyond our past mistakes. True love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about choosing to build something beautiful with someone who values growth, forgiveness, and the daily choice to show up for each other.